We went to Okinawa, and the water is like this, it's clear, as smooth as anything. And I think to myself, what a beautiful day this is. Wouldn't it be nice to have a picnic? It changed. For 79 days, we had air raids.
Having RPG slam up against palm trees and blow up and all that, and sitting and watching guys on a rooftop with an M60 machine gun, and then next to him is an Iraqi soldier with his machine gun. It's very surreal. I think that's the answer, the best answer I can give you is it's ridiculous. And it's something that I wouldn't wish on anybody, ever.
When we had gotten in that firefight, it kind of startled me, and I bit down on a lollipop and broke my 2 front teeth.
Oh my God.
Out of all things, that's what broke my teeth.
My mom immigrated to the United States, and when she got here, she fell in love with this country. I didn't think about it too much to join the military until later on. I was involved with the police department, and then somebody said, you should join the military. Yeah, it's just something about serving this country, giving back to such a great place that gave so much to my family. I wanted to join the Marine Corps, and I'm Mexican, so therefore we have this bravado to us, and so I showed up to see the Marine Corps recruiter, and he wasn't there. So this big, tall Army guy with huge guns comes out, and he says, well, he's not here, he's at lunch. Why don't you come in here and talk to us? And that's where I got enticed to join the Army. Next thing I know, I signed up for 3 years, but I came in the Army as an enlisted man, as a private first class. Served in the infantry, and stationed in Hawaii for 5 years. I just re-enlisted for 5 years, stayed there, and went to a bunch of schools. And then later on, I went to the officer candidate school. So when I joined the military, I ended up becoming an infantryman, which is, if you take the entire military, you have cooks, administration, you have military police, you have legal people, you have recruiters, you have trainers. But for the military to actually grab a hold of something, you need a thumb. And so the thumb is the infantry. Anything can slip out of your hands, but until you have your thumb on it to grab a hold of it. So I knew that I wanted to be in the infantry. And then when I got there, later on, they see your talent through merit, right? And I was made an infantry rifle team leader. It was around that time that somebody identified that I had the ability to think and to share information and to lead. Yeah, you're asking good questions because it really just dawned on me. Yeah, I was a rifle team leader. I became a squad leader. And then I think my joy of leadership, even before I became an officer, was being that reconnaissance section leader, of just taking 12 guys out there in the middle of nowhere and go find the enemy or find tanks or find whatever it is and set up little ambushes or go out and report back to positions of a headquarters or other units. Yeah, it was dangerous. It was interesting and hair-raising, but all of that happened before I actually started doing combat operations. I think the first time we actually did combat operations was I was stationed in Hawaii. We were doing counter-narcotics operations on the border of Mexico. And this is back in 1991. And so we were in and out of the border, and then we started doing these are reconnaissance operations, and we started doing reconnaissance operations in other areas within our own country to find out where these narco-traffickers were setting up shop and dropping off and doing airfields and stuff like that. And it was real because we're doing briefings and you're sitting in a room with DEA, FBI, ATF, and we're being dropped off in SUVs and God knows where. We were given satellite radios to do check-ins with all these guys or who knows where to let them know where we are at, what we're doing, that we're okay, and what is it that we're finding. And then get in, sneak in, don't get seen, and then sneak back out and link up with a couple of SUVs to get you out of there. I got a chance to do a lot of stuff like that, and then I did go into special operations in 2005, 2006. And so my last few years. I wanted to become a special forces officer, but I have the sickle cell trait, so therefore I couldn't. So I stayed in the special operations community as a civil military operations officer and got a chance to go in, do some great stuff. And one of the culminating things I did, I was the advisor for the Kuwaiti Land Forces Command. And I was tasked to advise and train the commando units, special forces unit, and they're kind of like their special reaction force in Kuwait in 2008 to 2000. In 2007, 2008, it's all a blur. But so I joined, in 1990, and really started getting into it in 1991. I had 3 company commands, which is very seldomly heard. So I had 1 company command in Fort Benning, Georgia, and then I took a company command in Iraq. Then I took another command when I was back in Fort Carson, Colorado. When I gave up command the 3rd time, I think those decision points are like, well, if I'm not going to be in front of soldiers, leading soldiers to do something, then I really don't want to be in an office the rest of my life. I did 2 tours in Iraq, but before Iraq, a few of us did combat operations prior to the big war starting. And then I was in combat operations in Kosovo, got a chance to do some of that. And the reason I've shared those is because all of those minor conflicts prepared me to lead a company command when I was in Iraq. I saw more tragedy in other countries that it helped me prepare my soldiers, helped me deal with my soldiers, helped me do a lot of planning and leading. If I would have saw some of the horrid things for the first time when I was in command, I don't think I would be able to respond or react the way I responded when I was there. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay. I want to go back to Kosovo. Kosovo was my first special operations mission. And I saw the worst in humanity. I walked away thinking that a human being is a human being. It doesn't matter what country you're from. It doesn't matter what you believe. You deserve to live your life the way you want to live. So case in point, in Kosovo, we had Russian soldiers there. And I know there's a lot of conflict right now, talking about Russia this, Russia that. And these Russians, these are kids. They just graduated from Burnt Hills, Boston Lake High School, right? They graduated from Shen, but they're Russian, and so they're Russian soldiers for some reason. And they're getting shot at. There's a sniper out there, an Albanian sniper who's shooting at these Russian kids. So a couple of other leaders from other countries and I got together and we're like, we're going to go do something about this. Because these Russian kids didn't have any leaders. They didn't have guys like us. So we went out and got a German Leopard 2. It's a huge tank. It's amazing, right? It's a monster. And so we got an entire tank crew and we parked it next to this Russian BMP, which is tiny. And we parked it next to them and they had thermal sights on it. And they were able to identify where this sniper is coming from, where they're at. So we're able to go out there and capture the sniper. But it was us thinking, it was Germans, Americans, and some Turkish guys, and thinking, we got to do something about this because these poor Russian kids don't have any leaders there. They don't have really good equipment. And if we allow it to happen, this sniper is going to kill them all. So we had to do something, right? Because they're just kids. I just had that in my heart that you're just kids. You know, you may be Kuwaiti, you may be Jordanian, you may be Iraqi, but no matter what it is, you're just a kid, so you deserve to get taken care of. And so that's something I've always carried with me. Digging your foxhole. Digging a trench and digging a foxhole is you're preparing for the worst case scenario, right? Because you're preparing yourself to be on the defense. Something that would be similar to that was being on a forwarding operating base and you got sandbags around you and you're sandbagging rooms, sandbagging walls and stuff like that. So yeah, being involved in that kind of an operation, yes. Having RPGs slam up against palm trees and blow up and all that, and sitting and watching guys on a rooftop with an M60 machine gun, and then next to him is an Iraqi soldier with his machine gun shooting at bad guys, well, people that we think are bad guys, and doing that, yes. I've been there, I've seen that, been a part of it. It's very surreal. I think that's the best answer I can give you is, yeah, it's not, you walk in there, or you run in there, or you're ducking while that's going on above you at a rooftop level, and you're going to try to weasel your way in to see what's going on like an idiot. It's very surreal. It's ridiculous, and it's something that I wouldn't wish on anybody, ever. Yeah, it's weird. It's I'm visualizing. I was on a patrol, and we pulled over outside of a town, outside of FOB. It was a forward operating base, and we call in and say, hey, we're about 10 minutes away. And we're saying, don't come over, we're in a gunfight. And the gunfight's going on for like an hour. And we're like, okay, look, we're sitting out here, we can go support you guys. Well, we wouldn't know what to do with you guys because we were getting hit from every angle. And I'm like, all right, so let's figure it out. Let's just go. right? So you have to, as a leader, you make that decision. And sometimes the decision is just go. And so we're driving, weaving in and out of these little streets and back alleys in Iraq. And you're looking at two ladies in the alley on your right side of your vehicle, and they're just walking together. It's like walking with your mom, at the mall, basically. And then you go across and you look again to your right side, because we're going left, and you see kids playing soccer. And then you finally show up, and you see everything getting blown up around you. And actually, it's an actual gunfight, a huge gunfight. And you go into this compound, and you park it, get out of the way. And oh, by the way, you got to go to the bathroom too. And then you lock and load, and then you're asking, it's kind of like, I don't want to call it like football, but then you're like, okay, well, where do we go? And you're looking for somebody, another leader, to say, hey, I got 12 guys, we're ready, put us in where you need us. And then we just make our way and try to fit in like Legos, and then try to figure out where we can support people. There's nothing glorious about it. Just nothing. When you have people's lives that are at stake, and the only reason, like we showed up, and we knew that we needed the help. Like those Russian kids in Kosovo, they're just kids. The Albanian guy that was shooting as a sniper at them, he thought those Russian kids were bad guys. He's blaming them for something that happened to him a long time ago. So there's nothing glorious about it. Losing somebody in combat is awful. But the way you cope with it is by glorifying it, which is stupid sometimes. You don't really give yourself a chance to breathe, to go through the loss process. A lot of us, we go through the loss process sometimes on a daily basis. At the end of the day, human beings are awful to each other. I had a young soldier, 4 foot nothing, freckles, red hair, geeky looking, glasses. And a patrol got caught, and my vehicle is over here. And so she was stuck in an apex, and she was getting shot at from all different directions. And only a couple of guys can help her out, right, because of the angles and stuff like that. So she held her own. She was on her radio. She had a malfunction for M16, which is temperamental at best, and she handled it. So we got out of the situation, came back in for a debrief, and she broke down. And she didn't want to break down. She wanted to be tough like the guys. We're not tough. There's a sense that you need to suck it up and drive on. That was that point that we all felt comfortable enough to let our emotions out. Sometimes when you lose somebody so close that you were bunkmates with, you have to let it out. And if you have that experience with somebody that has felt that, you're able to have that emotional bond with them. There's been some guys that have found me on Facebook. And there's been some guys that have found me on LinkedIn, specifically for a huge loss we had. You remember dates, and that's what brings you guys together. So on May 12th, 2007, at 4:30 in the morning, there was a catastrophic attack. And we lost 12 guys that night. 4 guys were taken hostage. We got the remains of 2 guys within about 6 hours. And so the entire unit deployed back to the United States without 2 guys, Brian Foti and Jimenez, young kids, 20s. And so that incident happened. And then fast forward several years afterwards, I'm at a store, and this guy says, hey, I know a guy that went to combat. I'm like, yeah, whatever. And because most people I hear have been to combat, I don't believe them. Because some guys just like to talk story. And so he says, no, man, he has. I said, here, I'll show you a tattoo. He said, okay, it's going to be like U.S. Marine Corps or whatever and all that, right? Well, this kid, he had the names of all 12 of those guys tattooed on his arm because he carried that with him his whole time. And so I called him right then and there. I said, hey, you need to meet me at Via Italia. We need to have coffee. And he suffered for that because he was 3 miles down the road when that happened. And then when they all showed up, it was all like awful. He had to see what happened. and deal with that firsthand. Sometimes it sucks. Yeah, you wish the world was bigger. Yeah, it sucks. Yeah, it's why, there's nothing to glorify about going to combat. You know, it's funny because I waited to be a dad for so long. You know, I didn't want to be always deployed and then have kids at that certain age. I do have a daughter who's 22. I love her to death. But I wasn't really there for her because I was in the military and I was deployed a lot. So that was my decision factors, that I've been taking care of the sons and daughters of America, the sons and daughters of liberty for so long that I wanted to make sure my transition point was to take care of my two sons and be there for them. And so I just find myself now working with veterans, helping veterans transition, because it's hard, right? You transition from the military to civilian life, but then through civilian life, you always go through different transitions: jobs, marriage, divorce, kids, and things and whatnot. And so it's really hard for some veterans to make those decisions to cope with life outside the military.
At least she gave me a nice soft seat.
Yeah.
I was raised with 4 other fellows. We're just like you, a group. We never apart. When you see one, you see 5 of us. And somehow or other, one suggests, let's enlist. We all enlisted. They went in the Marines, I went in the Navy. It just popped in my head. I could take the Navy. At 17, you don't know what the hell you want to do. So yeah, I made it back. 2 other guys didn't, so that's the way it went. I was you see this patch? Usually Navy men don't get a patch. They just get the name of their ship. But this is a special force. We took the troops ashore. That's why we got this patch.
Wow.
The only Navy personnel has this patch. We rushed right in because they wanted us in the Pacific in a hurry, because we're a flagship, a communication ship. And of course, we're at that time the most modern communication ship there was. In the long run, they made a mistake. You know what the old saying is? Haste makes waste. You ever hear that term? Well, the Navy made waste with us. They wanted us fast, but we never got where we intended to go because we broke down, because we were top heavy for one thing. About a foot from, I wouldn't be here today. That's how, and then going through the Panama Canal, we lost our steering. We went in a bank, and they had to pull us up with a couple of tugs. We were supposed to meant to go to Iwo Jima, but on the way we broke down again. We had to come back, so I don't know who took that job over. In the Navy, it's especially. You had one job to do, and that's it. I was assigned to a deckhand. Our main job was practice on your gun. I was assigned to a double 40 millimeter gun. We practice and practice and practice, a dry run. And it's really a dull situation. In the Navy, you never see your enemy. He's either up in the sky or under the water. You never see him. They ain't like the land forces when you see him face to face at times. So when they're not after you, you know, just like here, you're just taking a ride. I saw so much water you wouldn't believe. 2 years, that's all I saw was water. Went on land twice.
What were some of your most memorable experiences?
My most memorable season, witnessing the signing of the peace treaty in Tokyo Bay. We were the second ship in Tokyo Bay because we were the communication ship. It took about 3 or 4 days for talk aboard our ship, all the Japanese delegations. I had the guard duty at the gangplank, and every Japanese came, you always bowed down to you. No, I think they always had them big funny hats. Yeah, quite a thing. Quite a sight, Tokyo Bay, yeah. Pacific is never quiet. It's a rough body. We had 35, 40-foot waves, custom.
Wow.
We went to Okinawa, we dropped the anchor, and the water is like this. It's clear, as smooth as anything. And the Marines and the Army went ashore. We unloaded them. Nothing happened. And I think to myself, what a beautiful day this is. Wouldn't it be nice to have a picnic? It changed. For 79 days, we had air raids. We were lucky. We've come very close one time. And how this plane got where he was, my gun was right in the midships. And he was coming just above the water. He's coming right straight. I said, Charlie, I think this may be your last day. And somehow or other, with a 40 millimeter gun, you can't lower it. Only it's meant for in the air. We had 20 millimeter guns. Somebody got them, and the left wing flew off, and that was it. We were spared. That was the most never-ending, harassing part of my experience. So outside of it was just like a 9-to-5 job. You lost a lot of sleep.
So what has changed in society since the war?
That's a puzzling question. From my perspective, our country's in a mess. Too much violence, too much shooting. It should never be. Today, people are so uptight and worried about things they shouldn't be worried about. My philosophy is, in life, there's things you can do something about, do it. And there's other things you can't do nothing about it. It's out of your control. Forget it and do the best you can. Our society is terrible today, terrible.
Speaking of home, what was it like returning home after your service in the war?
Well, two things I had in mind. Military person one. I was 20 years old at the time. To get a job, that was the easy part. Find a wife, that took a little longer. But I got a prize, I'll tell you. I was married 73 years, and I wish I could have 73 more years with that lady. I had a good life. I have no qualms, no bad experiences. I'd do it all over again.
Do you have anything else you'd like to add about your experiences?
What experience, really? I mean, air raids you have every night. All you do is sit by your guns. If they're not around you, you got nothing to do. When you are, you just keep on firing until you, hopefully you got him before he got you. It was a good life. I enjoy being with young people that's interested in it. If you know what history's all about, you won't make the same mistakes because you know what mistakes we made. Everybody makes mistakes. Nobody's perfect. If somebody says, I know everything, he's throwing you a lot of bull. I was born on a farm. At that time, there was no electricity. Now, just think that, no electricity. Today, if you want heat in the house, you just touch a button. Back then, you had wood stove. When they went out, it was cold. We used to have to go to bed with our clothes on and half a dozen blankets to keep warm. And once the winter sets in, you never left the house because the roads were all, there was no such a thing as a snowplow. All you had is horse and wagon. And we used to get a lot of snow back then. I know, and when you went to the bathroom, you had to go to another house. And I used to have to walk through where my grandfather shoveled the path. The snow was over my head. Even to me, it's amazing with these iPhones. You can talk to somebody around the world in seconds and show your photo of whatever you want to say. I find out in life, there's always pros and cons to everything. Nothing is ever one way or the other. It's a little bit of everything. So that's my attitude. I always try to get the positive side of everything. Even though there's a lot of negative, I always try to stick to the positive. That way, you're much happier. With the way the world is today, no wonder the people are in the straits they are. You know, like this Ukraine business. This should never happen, you know? There's no reason for that. Anything else, my friends?
What was your career after the military?
I was a welder, specialized in aluminum and brass. That was I served there almost 50 years. It was a good occupation, paid a pretty good salary. I have no complaints. My first job was for the railroad. I made 80 cents an hour. And that was top wages back then, 80 cents an hour. It is what it is, my friend. Enjoy it as best you can. And always keep a positive outlook on your life, and you're better off. Too many people get so uptight about things that, everybody's worried about the economy. I went through this so many times that it comes and goes like everything else. Give it time. This economy will come back again.
It's very wise.
History will teach you a lot. In war, nobody's a winner. Everybody's a loser. I thought after the war was over, we all get together and carry on like we were youngsters. The two Marines that come back, they were old men. They didn't want to talk about it. They didn't want to talk to me. They just went their own way. They weren't the same.
Thank you so much for coming on.
I always love to be around students because you love to absorb things, You probably never experienced what I did or a lot of other people did. And I didn't experience what the past generation I went through. So it's a life experience, So enjoy yourself. I'm glad you've got a good group of friends. Nice seeing you now.
It was nice talking to you.
Same here.
Thank you.
I enjoyed it very much.
Do you need a hand?
Oh, I make up. It takes a little while, but I get up. It's easier sitting down than getting down, I tell you.
I grew up in Schenectady, not too far from here. There wasn't a whole lot going for me in the right path in Schenectady. That was part of it. The other part of it is I am a seeker of adventure. So I think, just getting away from the area and being able to travel and explore, that was a big thing. I decided to join the infantry, which is one of the more highly trained jobs in the Army. Fort Benning, Georgia, it was pretty tough. I can't lie. It was 23 weeks or something like that. Yeah. And then beyond that, I had trained for years in Hawaii before deploying to Afghanistan. So you can't really define Afghanistan in a general climate, right? It's not like you're in the deserts of the Middle East. This is actually more of a Southwest Asia. In the wintertime, it was down to 30 below zero. In the summertime, it was up to 130 degrees. So I was in the scout platoon. We patrolled basically the entire province. So my battalion, 2nd Battalion, 27th Infantry Wolfhounds, was in charge of the province of Paktika. And I challenge you to actually look up where Paktika is after this, because it's one of the most, it's pretty much out in the middle of nowhere, right on the Pakistan border. We had a couple different missions. We had to keep up relations around the province, right? We brought the battalion commander and different high-ranking individuals around the province. So that was one mission. The other mission was going after high-value targets. Those were some of the tougher missions. An interesting experience was one of those missions going after a high-value target. We were going after a bomb maker, right? And we were chasing them from town to town for about 4 days. So this was one of those times where it was down to, I think it was 22 below zero. And our platoon had we had to hold security. So about 80 to 90% of us were up at any single given time. So that led to a lack of sleep. So maybe within the 4 days, maybe about 5 hours of sleep the entire time. We finally found out where this guy was. We set up a combined operation with the Ranger Bat, where we did a cordon search. We cordoned off the compound with vehicles to secure the perimeter around the compound, and we sent in an element to basically grab the guy that was making bombs and arrest him. It ended up in a firefight. I was on the cordon and it ended up in a firefight. And in order to stay awake, I was chewing on a lollipop. When we had gotten in that firefight, it kind of startled me, and I bit down on a lollipop and broke my 2 front teeth.
Oh my God.
Out of all things, that's what broke my teeth. And here's the thing, right? I welcome the difficulty. but it had to do with the amount and intensity of training that we had to go through to be infantry. We did, if you're talking about training, we did several air assault missions where we're repelling. I was stationed in Hawaii, so we're going from island to island, and I'm repelling from helicopters, myself and my squad, and facing the OPFOR being opposing force, right? So we're talking about training, and the opposing force were the U.S. Marines, so we're basically going head on head as each other's opposing force. Those were challenging, but I got to say that they were fun.
Yeah. So after Afghanistan, what was next? Did you return home after that?
I returned home, and then I was recalled from inactive ready reserve and deployed to Iraq. It was completely different. It was a completely different mission. They had us, pretty much an element of us, in charge of a detainee complex, which were all the people that got caught up in the war, and they had to figure out who the bad guys were and who were not. Right. So they had us in charge of a detainee complex, and this was down by the border of Kuwait. I would say that it was on a regular 145 degrees. You get used to it. You rely on your friends' company, basically, right? So you're all sucking together.
So I imagine eventually you returned from Iraq. So
Yeah.
Around what time was that?
Around 07, 08.
What did you do for
I graduated college. I became a environmental scientist. I did a lot of work in the Gulf of Mexico with the BP oil spill. But at that point, you know, there's something missing from your life. So I decided to join the Army National Guard. I am a maintenance inspector.